We're going to switch gears and we're going to allow you time to practice right now with a document with the documents that we introduced to you. So we want to stress, though, before that this is not about compliance, this is about support. And while districts may not trigger assistance, we want to support them, like Sue said, on the front end. So we want to make sure we're providing support. So in front of you in your handouts, you have Eagle Springs High School, which is a Lilac LCAP. You have an Eagle Springs top-level data display. You also have your Astro Bright Yellow criteria. And you have a green handout called Differentiated Assistance and Support. Now, what we'll do is we'll have you review your top-level data display on the Eagle Springs Union High School District. And we'll have you look at your criteria, the Astro Bright form, and determine whether this district needs assistance. And using their LCAP, look at their existing actions and services and determine what differentiated assistance and support you would provide. So similar to what we just did, but we're going to do it with another district. We're trying to allow you some time to practice with these documents and understand this process. And the great thing about it is we've had lots of good questions around it, so before we leave. So if you have more questions around it, please feel free to ask us before we leave. I might not know the answers. I'll call in my backup team. But because we don't want you walking away with information you don't understand. So I would like you to begin with your elbow partner again to determine what differentiated assistance the district needs, and that's on the green form after you reviewed the top-level data display, the LCAP, and your Astro Bright paper. I'll give you 20 minutes is what I have, somewhere around there. I've had a request to say, what if Eagle Springs was missing in another area? So let's say we don't have it yet, but chronic absenteeism. And they're missing, and they're having a red in chronic absenteeism, and maybe they have a red with their English learners in math. So say the English learners are struggling with chronic absenteeism and math. What would you do to provide that support for the district? So you would go into the LCAP and see, do they have anything on chronic absenteeism? Now, because we don't have their whole LCAP, this school might not have chronic absenteeism, so it doesn't work as well. But they might have read in this might talk about their math, so you could find out what it is they're doing to provide for their EL learners, if they are or if they aren't, and you could use that. Does that help? Okay. And we want to be clear, this is for you to practice, and I will go back into the folder so you have it, but this is for county offices to practice and provide you an opportunity to practice. You wouldn't do this to a district, you would do it alongside, and you would question, and you would have those great questions around their chronic absenteeism or their EL math. So I'll let you get back to that. Did that help, or do I need to walk more? Okay, that helped. Okay, I'll let you get back to talking about it and finding some supports. What would you do for those EL kids? So hopefully in your team you were able to discuss what supports you would provide this district, assuming they had another indicator that they needed to work on. We will fix that, just so you know. We'll fix it in the folder and make it right so that you can use these documents. In front of you, you have a yellow document, and it looks a lot like this, and it says priority, state indicator, district, expected measurable outcomes. This may look familiar. We used it in the last session. We just added all the priorities and the state indicators. So using your Eagle Springs Union High School district data, I want you to identify the state indicator student groups that are areas of concern, which you just kind of did, and then I told you to make one up. Use the existing LCAP and locate and write down the expected measurable outcomes from an area that they were not doing so well in. And I want you to use their LCAP also to identify actions that support this area of need. So you may find that there are actions or there aren't actions that are supporting this. So is it aligned? And I want you to write down one question that would help guide a district to greater alignment. So we'll give you about, I don't know, 5, maybe 7 minutes. My husband calls that my teacher time because I always say, I'll be ready in 7 minutes. And he's like, 7? So I'll give you about 7 minutes teacher time to do this yellow paper. Measurable outcome. What question do you have for this district? Do you need that? What question would provoke some growth? And going back to what Judy said about evidence, do you need to bring them back to maybe they don't have an expected measurable outcome in there around this? So bringing them back to the evidence. So I'm not going to have you go through the small and a large school district, but there's another example in there that you could pair up and do later. We're going to step it into strengths and weaknesses, and this is where I was, this is a Diana piece, and I was hoping to hand over the microphone. But the strengths and weakness piece is important to note because in level 2, you have to identify strengths and weaknesses with the district. I say with, not to the district. You need to identify their strengths and weaknesses. And Sacramento County Office of Ed put this great group of questions together to help us examine our weaknesses and examine the strengths. So Sac County did a great job on this, and I believe it's a gray handout, and it has questions that you can use with districts and items you can use with districts as you do a strength and weakness analysis. And what we'd like you to do is read it to yourself and find 2 nuggets, 2 things you could use, and 1 next step for using this tool. So take, I don't know, I'll give you about 5 minutes for this activity. Go ahead and read it to yourself and find 2 nuggets and 1 next step. Okay, so as you can see, this was a valuable resource. So hopefully you were able to take away 2 nuggets and 1 next step. This next document, Madera County Office of Ed made, and you can adapt it. This is not a handout. It's in your additional resource folder. It's in the presenter's guide. You can press the link and it will bring you this, but it has an area to identify strengths, weaknesses, and whether things are aligned, if they have activities in their LCAP, kind of what we've been walking you through, and what subgroups need to be addressed. And we probably should change that to student groups. So as we're learning about all these things. So the next section I'm going to turn over to Judy. Woohoo!
I'm always happy to help. I know that Diana was supposed to speak to this today, and we hope she's doing well. As we think about building capacity within county offices, that happens in a variety of ways. Certainly, we've had opportunities this fall to be involved in learning together. But we also know that some of the capacity building is saying to one of your partner counties, hey, I hear you're working on this piece. Can I come observe? Can you share with me some of the resources that you've been using along those lines? And as Amy mentioned earlier, in Region 2, we are very dependent on our partners because none of the county offices within Region 2 is large. The largest county is Butte. Butte has 31,000 students in their county. And so every other county is smaller than that. And so it really does create opportunities for us to build capacity not only individually, but across our region. And last school year in May, during a CISC meeting, a tool was shared, and it was one of the ones that was developed by the 6 counties that were working with the CalEd partners last year. And this was a resource to really begin to think about state priorities and your capacity within those areas. So as we think about where this is heading, English learners may be a population, a student group that quickly falls out, as will students with disabilities. And is your county office structured in a way that you can send out support to a district that may have English learners not only not meeting the mark on the EL assessment of progress, but maybe their suspension rates are also high. So do you have capacity within your county office to go forward and support, or is there a resource within your region that you can tap into? And so part of the purpose of the County Capacity Survey that was introduced in May, and then over this summer, CISC members were introduced to the tool, and then they took it back and worked with their cabinet teams to determine where do we have capacity, where do we not have capacity. And then in September, when we met together, we had the opportunity to talk within regional groups to say, if we don't have capacity, and in Shasta County, we don't as it relates to English learners. Our English learner population is less than 5%. And yet we have 2 districts that have a sizable English learner population, but we don't have someone on staff with that area of expertise. But Butte does. And so being able to make those connections across counties really is the way that we need to operate. And so as we looked at this survey tool, I wanted, let me explain it a little bit to you. You have, the very last handout is some directions that go along with this particular tool. The tool itself is a link on your presenter's agenda. But what happens with this tool is it's broken down by each state priority, because we know districts may have need for technical assistance and support related to any one of the 8 state priorities. So as we thought about what county office capacity was in relation, this slide happens to show state priority 1, there were some terms developed. So if it says no capacity, that meant that the county was not able to provide analysis and or services, which would include staffing, expertise, and resources to districts. If there was partial capacity, that meant that we would have some ability to provide analysis and or services, including staff and expertise, if less than half of our districts requested that service. So within Shasta County, we have 25 districts. If they all asked for or had the same need at the same time, what would be our capacity? Could we meet the needs of half of the districts? So that was the partial or full. We would be able to provide that analysis and services if all the districts requested that within the same span of time. And so the idea of staffing, you'll see the columns break down between expertise and staffing under each one of those categories. So staffing is an expert in the area identified in the tool that's identified within the rows who could provide support, analysis, or service to district. And then the idea of expertise was the ability, we have the knowledge necessary. We may not have enough staff if several of them or quite a few of them ask for it, but we do have the knowledge base in order to help with that area. So that's a little bit about the structure of the tool. And so at the September meeting, what we did is we went through in regional groups, and as you know, there's 11 regions. Not every region finished the survey, and Region 2 was one of those that didn't finish because our discussions were so involved in terms of who had what resource, how might we share that. But as you look across the 8 state priorities, how many regions said they had full capacity when you look across the region to meet the needs of districts, where we had partial and where we might have none. So here's just a first glimpse. This was originally going to be a handout, but the font was so very small to fit it on a sheet of paper, we decided that we would make it an online resource only, so you can get a sense region by region, how that plays out in terms of current year capacity. One of the things that I've talked with several people about is this really does create a new structure and new thinking about the way we operate as county offices. So when we think about what services districts are going to be asking for, that may not be the same services we have in place right now. If they're looking for things for subgroups that are specific to a state or local priority, are we structured in ways within our various offices to be able to provide that level of support? So you have the opportunity to go online and see where those strengths and needs across each one of the regions currently lie. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Michelle, and Michelle's going to take you into level 3.
So the good news is we're almost done. And we have about 2 minutes left. And we're just going to do a quick overview of level 3. Amy did a great job at the beginning because level 3 is pretty self-explanatory. We don't have to go too in-depth as a county office. So we're just sharing one last time how you fall into level 3. So here are our levels again. Level 3 is where we have CCEE step in, and as Amy mentioned, their phrase, term, motto is hugs not hammers, and so they really want to work with districts through this process and at this level, and so we want to keep that in mind as we go through this process with them. This is a quick slide for you to kind of see the jump from level 2 to level 3 because it is pretty drastic. And I think this is maybe where some of us got a little confused earlier in regards to subgroups or student groups and priorities. So on the left side is our level 2. So any student group that did not meet the performance criteria for 2 or more priorities. And then they jumped to level 3 with 3 or more student groups did not meet the performance criteria for 2 or more priorities in 3 out of 4 consecutive years. So a lot to remember. Hopefully this slide will come in real handy for you as you go through this process. A quick way to look at it. Assistance is either in the assignment of an outside expert to assist the LEA, including requesting that another LEA within the county partner to support the LEA's improvement, or referral to the CCEE. And just as a note, there are a couple of options that the state superintendent has as well. So, what does it mean to fall with or to join up with CCEE, and how do you get there? So one of the ways is at a district's request. So a district may be at level 1 or 2, not in level 3 at all, but they might want to partner with CCEE. So they can request the assistance or advice from them. The second way is if a county superintendent determines that the CCEE's assistance is required. And the third way is if the CCEE, after consulting with the state superintendent of public instruction, determines that the CCEE's assistance is required. So again, the number 1 is by request. So, how did the district get to level 3 other than what we saw before? This is the actual ed code. So hopefully that slide's a little simpler to follow than the actual ed code itself. But they need to meet both of the following criteria. So the LEAs did not improve the outcomes for 3 or more student groups, as we mentioned earlier. If the school district has less than 3 pupil student groups, all of the school district's pupil student groups are counted in regard to more than one state or local priority in 3 out of 4 consecutive years. And then the second way is if the CCE has provided assistance and advice to the district and submits that the district has failed or is unable to implement the recommendations, or their performance is persistent or acute based on the rubrics. So that's just the actual verbiage behind the screen that you saw a couple slides ago. So the SPI, with the approval of the state board, may do one or more of the following when you get into the level 3. They may make changes to the LCAP. They may develop and impose some budget revisions. They may stay or rescind an action that would prevent the district from improving outcomes for all student groups that aren't making progress. Or they may appoint an academic trustee to exercise powers and authority. And again, they may do one or more of the following of those 4. So, to wrap it all up, COEs will provide support in level 1 and level 2, and level 3 will be determined by the SPI, and recommendations will be made to CCEE for support. We will learn more about the intensive intervention level once the state ESSA plan has been approved. So with that, we have wrapped up our section, and it is technically time for a break unless there are questions, Judy, that need to be addressed.
Not right now.
All right. Well, that's great. We answered all your questions. I love it. All right, we're going to take 10-minute break.